Here, and I want to welcome all of you to our Alliance program for November. As you know, our programs are the second Thursday of every month, starting at 11. And I'll be introducing Nicole in a bit. Our one in December is going to be of the Camino the Camino pilgrimage walk that was taken by a large number of people from our church last spring. And I think we have Margaret Marks, Jeannie O'Farrell, Michael Griffin are putting together the, uh, the the show, the program for next the one in December, which I think I wrote it down, is going to be on the 12th again. So be sure to do that. And then in January, we're going to have Lanier, and Mark has just agreed for February. He's going to be doing his. And I think in March, we're going to, Richard, is that the date we set for you to do one on your Galapagos trip? And we're going to have Andrea Prestwich in April, and we're still pondering May. So that's a pretty full plate. And if you have any other ideas, programs, I know there's a lot floating around, so you can let me know. But I want to introduce Nicole Bernstein as somebody that you all know and we love. And she was born in Paris and has goes back with her husband to their apartment for about 3 months and maybe more every year. And Nicole is an artist as well as a photographer, and she loves to explore those unknown places that those of us who've been to Paris and maybe seen the highlights of the monuments, we don't have the time or the knowledge to explore the depths. So Nicole, I'm going to turn it over to you and thank you for part two, Unknown Places in Paris.
Uh, okay. Can you see everything now?
Yes.
And if everybody could mute themselves so that we are just hearing.
Okay, what I want to say is that I left the column on the left so that eventually at the end, if you have any questions, I can go back to whatever you might question specifically and also other questions. I want to thank you for coming again. and I have to say, I was born in Paris, but I discover every year all kinds of different things that are that I've never known. Some maybe they existed while I was there, and some just sprouted. And every year, a new museum comes up. I have no idea how the French manage that, but somehow one or two museums sprouts up, either in Paris or outside the city. But last year, I made a discovery, which is rather strange. I realized that Paris, even though I was born in Rive Droite, which is the right, can you see my arrow? Okay. I was born right around here, let's see, in the 9th arrondissement. I knew that there was the river that was crossing the city, but I was so used to using the subway, the metro, or buses, it never was a hindrance. I thought there was no problem. You go from the left bank to the right bank and vice versa. And then all of a sudden, this year, I realized really, really, that's a problem. It can be a problem. And this year it became a problem because of the Summer Olympics. And the Summer Olympics really transformed the way the city functioned. And basically, it was made for tourists with a lack of possibility of reaching certain areas, even for people who were French. So it came in two stages. And if you see this slide, you have an idea of in Paris where everything is. So Montmartre is at the very top here on the north, and it got impossible to get there, except for the marathon and also for the cyclists for the Olympics. So people were very, very displeased. French people were displeased, but tourists were delighted. However, you you from one date to another, and fortunately, the government was very precise. They said at which station you would stop, your bus would stop, or your subway would stop. And gradually the bridges were cut off because they were prepared for the exhibits and for the Olympics. However, it looks really nice. It will look very nice because a lot of money was spent at spiffing up old monuments and old parts that should have been done for years. So it cost a fortune, but I think in the end, it will be worth it. Ephemera is the first thing I'm presenting. The French are big on that. They do things that don't last. It's a little bit like the Japanese. And people rush to see or not, but it's always very artistic. So the first thing that I want, and by the way, I only chose a few because there are so many. And we went to the whatever we could reach easily at first. So that's very near where we live, and it was very popular with the locals and with French people in general who'd come to visit near the Gare Montparnasse. The tower, the only skyscraper in Paris, is the Tour Montparnasse, which is very near where we live. And they're refurbishing it. Eventually it will be done. But meanwhile, the whole building of the Galerie Lafayette that was right there was totally empty. So they've been using this empty space temporarily because there are lots of empty spaces. Later on, I'll show you one, and that's used permanently. But anyways, and this is what they've done in the bowels of that empty building. They have exhibits that are absolutely wonderful, educational, and not too expensive to get to, but you do have to sign up for them. And the one I wanted to show you is that this exhibit of Egyptian artifacts, it's the when Tutankhamun was discovered, it was obviously Carter, the Brit, who discovered it in Egypt. However, the French had, since Napoleon, had helped to create also the Egyptian museum in Cairo. So they have access still now to everything they really want. The Louvre has artifacts that were brought back from Egypt. That most of them were bought, but some were given. At any rate, they recreated all that was found, and these are recreated correctly, specifically, as if they were the original object. So if you take a look here, well, it could be boring, but it isn't, because like most of the time, the French have found a way, since I can remember, even as a child, to make things interesting by having games associated with the exhibit. So this was a newspaper that they gave when you bought the the entrance ticket, and you had to go through what was in the full exhibit to eventually be allowed to go to the treasure and see the various pieces of the treasure. And that's some of them. Okay. Now, graffiti in France in this country, everywhere, but graffiti in France have turned into an art that is not only appreciated, but encouraged. And some graffiti will be permanent, like in the 13th arrondissement. If you ever go there are tours to just see all the permanent graffiti. What I'm bringing here is graffitis that will be removed. This was along a wall of an old hospital, Hôpital Lariboisière, and you see it's rather attractive. Then even in the metal curtains of the stores, they do some attractive graffitis that will be changed regularly. Now, what was related to the Olympic, and that's really ephemeral, are the few things I'm going to show you. First one is from my balcony. I saw trials for cyclists to be able to allowed to be in the Olympics. Then they started prepping for the arrival of tourists. And if you look on the right, well, obviously the flag, and on the right, the model of the toy that they're selling for the Olympics is, first of all, it's called the Phrygie in France, which is from Phrygian bonnets. And this is what the revolutionaries wore. And all the French children know that. But what you may have noticed also is that they showed the Olympics, but Olympians it's for both valid, I mean, people who were completely fine, and Olympians, the pre-Olympians. The French tried to make it for both sets of Olympians. Even though they had two ceremonies, all the publicity included, and even during one of the ceremonies, it included people who were really had disabilities and people who did not. However, I hate to say this to you, but if you go to Paris and you try to use the subway, the escalators are few, elevators are few, and those that work don't always work. So this is, they're trying to attract American tourists, as you can see. So, but at the same time, it's really quite attractive, and they've always been using the three colors, this bleu, blanc, rouge, blue, white, and red, and this is what you see. Now, hotels on their windows even painted their own decorations with the various Olympic Games. Now, the ads that appeared for the Olympics, the Phrygie is on the right slide the right part that you see. It's from the post office. Every monument in Paris that's used publicly had its show to show they're supporting the Olympics. And they said, we're proud supporters of the official Olympics Paris. Then on the left, they're hoping the French are big walkers. They love to walk, they love to do things. They do sports, but mostly it's individual sports. So they're encouraging people there to go out and walk a lot, and you get kind of a prize just on your own to do your thing. Now, what they did to Paris, poor city, during the Olympics, they completely blocked off some areas along the Champs-Élysées. And the poor General de Gaulle, who's standing there, whose statue usually is isolated, there's nothing there, but it's next to another museum, he got surrounded by the shop, the store where you could buy all the stuff for the Olympics. Then even the garden of the Petit Palais, which is one of the building that was built when Alexander the Third, the Tsar, came to visit Paris. Uh, they even put a metal statue showing a form throwing a ball. Now, I'd like to point out that the French don't destroy buildings. They don't like that. If it's a building that's considered an antiquity, they fix it. So they did fix the Petit Palais, which is small, the smaller of the buildings built then for the exhibit uh, of the 19th century when the Tsar came to Paris. They built a bridge even for him, named after him. And on that bridge, I was very surprised. They put bleachers so that people could see when what was happening during the ceremony of the opening of the Olympics. And every French person was wondering, how are they going to have those 3,000 people sitting in bleachers on a bridge that's a 19th century bridge? Well, they checked it. It was perfectly fine. And the Pont Neuf in Paris, which is it's the oldest bridge, but it's called the New Bridge, is the oldest bridge in Paris. It's still standing, and we can't do that in this country, apparently. Okay, what I want to show also, life improvements that have been coming along. Uh, this first water fountain on the right has been in all the parks since the beginning. They've had parks in Paris. The middle one was a gift. It's called the Fountain Wallace, because it was a gift throughout Paris of all for drinking water for all people to come and have. And you see this young lady, she's using it. Now, for the Olympics, they created this wonderful water fountain where you can refill your bottles. And somewhere where I didn't go, they even have gas, sort of seltzer water somewhere. But so throughout Paris, you'll find uh, different water sources that, or you could drink. Now they have these teeny weensy cars, and these are new, and but they continue having them. They're a little bit dangerous, I think, but throughout various districts, they have these big boxes for whatever you want to recycle, and people come and bring things to them. Now that's a little funnier. Uh, they also have available condoms in various spots of the city. And that's on the left. And on the right, you will see something really funny. At Charles de Gaulle, uh, they have an area for the dogs to go. It's like a little mini park that's being cleaned up regularly, where you can have your dogs go and, I guess, relieve themselves. But that's the same area where people are allowed to smoke. Other people, I mean, otherwise you're not allowed to do that. And also to make your life easier. And the French do love all the arts. In various places of the cities, in various places of in stores, in train stations, in parks, they have available pianos for anybody to come and play. And Kenneth absolutely loved to listen to those people. Now, this happened when I started looking at what would be available for us before they cut us off from going on the other side of the city, because our apartment is on the rive gauche, which is the left bank. And after a certain time, unless you really had a proof that you needed to go, like you were a doctor or whatever, food shopping maybe, you couldn't go anywhere on the other side. So Rive Droite, we went to the Petit Palais, and the French are keen on shocking, or at least they think it's fun. So the Petit Palais they had a specific exhibit which was provocative, and actually part of the Olympic presentation was also supposed to be provocative. So you see, I'm just showing, but on the other hand, see, first, and it looks a little strange, but it's done on purpose. You have a beautiful butterfly, and if you look carefully, well, there's a skull. But they also have at the Petit Palais a very nice little garden and with a restaurant, because the French like to eat. Okay, now a lot of buildings have been repurposed in Paris. I only selected a few. The main one that I started on the Rive Droite, on the right bank, was the what they call the Pavillon de l'Arsenal. It used to be an arsenal, and what they did is they turned it into a center for architecture and urbanism with see, if you look, they've hollowed out the center part so people can come and sit down, have a cup of coffee or tea. But all along the walls, all around, they explained how Paris evolved from its very beginning. And that's one of the images they had of the exhibit, one of the world exhibits where the Petit Palais and Grand Palais were built. Now, if you look also inside, there are 3 levels, and it's all metal and glass. And people can come, and there are benches for you to sit and to look around and understand what has been happening in Paris, how it's been built. Le Marais, it's called Marais, means really it's a place where sometimes it wasn't too nice to be there. But anyways, it's Marais means now the word is escaping me in English. The ah where water the land is a little bit mushy, but they drained the land, they used it, and it's still called Le Marais, and this dates back to the Middle Ages. Now, in the Marais, there's a street, specific street, which is a little aside. With François Miron, you probably could go get it and get there and find all kinds of things. And I would suggest you go see this association, the association to save and make historical Paris better. Now, in the 1970s, I believe, the mayor wanted to destroy the old buildings and build new stuff. So what they did, this association, with the help of, I guess, donation, because the government gave a little money, but not much, in an old building that existed before, they made that association and they started clearing up and cleaning and recreating the old buildings as they were before. Now there are limitations. Some of those buildings cannot have elevators, but if you look at the image on the right, you'll see clearly how one of the buildings was transformed. Now, if you look at that image where I have my arrow, this particular image is of the cellar of the building where this association is. Now, in that street, you wouldn't expect in Paris to see a building built looking like that. Well, I'm not sure it has an elevator inside, because in order to get into every Paris building, you need a code. Well, I didn't have that, and I didn't know anybody in there. However, if you look at this staircase, which is from the previous house, you'll see how it is, how it was built. Very strong, solid wall that still exists there inside. And those staircases of wood are now reinforced with metal. No elevators. There's no place for elevators. Now, what they've done also is, because those buildings are kind of nice inside, and there are new universities that are being created. The various university, I'm only going to show two, there are more. Uh, the Sorbonne, Catalan Studies have they have taken one building, and this is how it's been transformed. Now, you can see it says Centre d'études catalanes, and they kept the walls as they were, as original as possible, preventing them from falling apart too. And on the right is the inside. And you see they're keeping the ceiling. They have to reinforce the wall. The walls are not particularly straight, but they make sure nothing happens, it won't fall. Now, I was lucky enough to be permitted, well, I kind of got connection, but to be permitted to get into one of the American universities that has been occupying since, oh, I don't know, it's not very long, maybe 1 year or 2 years, this very, very old building. So as you get in, actually that building is like most of the buildings in Paris that are like that, are made up of several layers of different ages of buildings. So this is the entrance, the first courtyard looks like that. The one on the left. The one on the right is the garden, and you could see this very, very old building, which they kept, and it has a well. Not all those buildings had wells. All around, of course, it was wet. So all around the Seine, on the rive droite, on the right bank, and on the left bank, and those wells are beautiful. And well, the water is used to water the plants, and it's really very nice. And they even have there was no time for me to show you everything. They even have grapes uh, around here, and they make their own wine. Well, now I don't think the school is doing it, but they used to make their own wine. Now, this is how the inside the school has been transformed, this building for Rice University. And you could see the ceilings on the right. This is a main meeting room. The ceilings have the beams that have been preserved, and just the way at the Fog Museum, they have some ceilings like that. And it's amazing to think they still have these things, because it's difficult to clean. And remember, if people use these universities, they have, first of all, it's pretty expensive to pay the rent. And second, you've got to, by law, you've got to keep it up. They can't have it becoming dirty looking, and they can't do certain changes to the building. They have to follow the rules. Uh, you notice the fireplace is the original fireplace, and electricity, the wiring is very, very difficult to deal with. Sometimes outside the building, it looks pretty terrible. Okay, now after we visited, by the way, to get there, it took us forever. I walked with my cane forever. And then we ended up where we could no longer go on the right bank. So we went where we could go, which is within walking distance or bus distance available to where our apartment is. So the first thing is that you probably know that Montparnasse and Montmartre are two places where um, artists have had their galleries and their ateliers and so forth. So, ga, the Galerie du Montparnasse is within a stone throw of the apartment, and it's Rue du Montparnasse, not surprising. And on the right, I'm sorry, it's Kenneth's phone. On the right, these are apartments that were built specifically for artists. So the rent was very low, and it still is very low. These people are mostly artists, or relate, whatever they do is related to the arts. And if you see on the left, regularly they have exhibits. So people can go and see those exhibits regularly. It's like here, and they have here once a year, various places have open studios. Well, it's an open gallery that renews itself all the time. Sometimes I think it's usually every 3 weeks. It depends a lot on what will be made available. I was asked to exhibit, but I wasn't going to be there, so I didn't. Okay, so now every building in Paris, no building in Paris, first of all, was built the way Phoenix or Washington was built, square. They put one building here, another one there. Imagine a little bit the way they did it in Boston, where really buildings they built every which way, and eventually things match, but not quite. Well, the French did some did something because they love nature. And so since they love nature, every complex possible the artist live, if you right, is between new buildings in Montparnasse. And that when we go to our dentist, we pass by that. It's absolutely beautiful. It has every season, it has flowers and plants, and they have a water garden. Okay. Now, um, you saw the Catalan studies. Well, they in Paris, in near Montparnasse, it is in Montparnasse actually. The plaza was built by an architect from Catalonia. It's called Place de la Catalogne, obviously. And what happened is that this man was very interested in Greek and Roman architecture, and he created a circular area, circular buildings, you could see. And these buildings had initially, until this year, at the center around those buildings, they had a sort of a runabout where cars would go around. Well, nowadays they created oh, and by the way, here you could, well, I'll go back to it. They created their own version of uh, the wild forests. They're not big on wild plants growing all over the place. They make it look a little wild, but not completely. As you could see, it's mowed and so forth. But I'll go back to this, which is because it was very, very, very hot this summer, and most summer in Paris, they have misters, meaning you go to places, parks, all parks have misters. So you go in and you get yourself all misted up with water, and you let it dry, and this way you cool down. Okay. Now this is Place de la Catalogne. They have every year they have a party, with people from Catalonia come, and you have French. Well, there are lots of people whose ancestors are from Catalonia, because first of all, during World War II, a lot of people from Catalonia came to France to fight with the Free French in the underground. And I had the opportunity, well, that's to get confused in all my counting, because everybody taught me Castellano, Catalan, French, and British English. However, you saw they have studies now in Catalan. When I was little, they were telling me Catalan is not a dialect, it is a language. So uh, they have parties, so they have drummers, they have once a year, there's food that they're bringing, and they do all, it was pouring rain incredibly that day. And on the left, they made human towers. And you can distinguish the people from Catalonia who came from Catalonia from the French people, because the French one wore this from Paris. And you see, they have a Eiffel Tower, and this, so you could see over here, they wore it on themselves, so you could tell who they were. Okay. Now, some buildings in Montparnasse were pretty ugly to start with, so those were not kept. On the contrary, they were completely redone. There was a completely redone, and it's now called Atelier de la Gaîté. Why is it called atelier? Because atelier means workshops, and all the artists have an atelier. I have an atelier here, but however, now it's a mall, and it's huge, and they haven't been able to rent everything yet, but they're getting there. And so I'm going to show you panels. There are panels that are empty, and before people bring their own um, stores. Now, if you compare that to our empty malls, see what they did? They're encouraging people to bring art, to put art, and not only art from now, but art from before. And if you look at the picture here, there's a photograph of a real photograph of what happened Gare Montparnasse. A train didn't stop and went through the glass windows and landed this way. The locomotive ended up that way. So they wanted to this is just a decoration. Now, this is, as you get in the mall, they're welcoming everybody. They're welcoming everybody, but nothing is in the face. I just want you to know it's very important for the French. They like to shock, but in a way that if you want to be shocked, you really have to look for it to be shocked. And I'm not shocked at all. It's a beauty. So it's very cavernous. And if you look at this, they keep the inner parts of the building showing. And they've done that with the Pompidou Museum. If you ever go to Paris, you'll see the Pompidou Museum has all its organizing technical stuff and heat and water and everything outside. It's visible in your face, but it works. And they also, here in many of the malls, including this one, which was built very recently, I think it was finished last year, they have not only a place to stay, but a place to have music and art exhibits. Okay. Now, Paris, there's an area in Paris, wait a minute, I want, which was visited by tourists a lot because it was known for being smutty. I mean, a lot of tourists came over there, Rue de la Gaîté, not far from us either. And not so But nowadays, see, you could see what it says. I don't have to give you a picture. And there's still a couple of stores like that, but they're closed. I mean, you can't, it's not like in Amsterdam where you have a red district. You don't. Uh, but what's more important, Rue de la Gaîté, is that they have not only kept, but cleaned up to make them look better, the old theaters that I only put three of them. There are many more. Bobino is very well known. That's where Edith Piaf started and a few others. And the Comédie Italienne, which is, it's in French, sometimes in Italian, and it's always very funny, but clean, okay? And this is the Théâtre du Montparnasse, which is a very, very old theater that dates back to the 19th century. Okay, let's see. Now, near the Seine, you have the Latin Quarter. And the Latin Quarter is very famous. What I've done is I've taken only one church of the Latin Quarter, Saint-Julien-le-Pauvre, because I'll show you. Again, you may notice it has a well. It's just on the other side of the river, and it has a well. It's not called Le Marais because Le Marais is on the other side. It's got a well, but this church, if you look here, this pillar was kept. They didn't clean it up, break it, or anything. This church is made up of different parts of buildings. That's an 11th century pillar. And every Sunday, many of the churches in France, not just in Paris, but in France, have concerts. So you have concert galore. You could, and not just Sunday, but also during the week. You could spend your life going to concerts in Paris. But uh, this church is no longer a Catholic church. And unlike what has been done in many other countries, all the churches that were Catholic churches that were disaffected have been transformed. Either they've been transformed into museums, or they've been given to other church denominations. Like this church is now belonging to a Coptic denomination, and inside it has icons. It's very beautiful. And then otherwise, churches have been transformed into really beautiful uh, uh, bookstores, stained glass places. Nothing has been turned into a nightclub or anything like that, like we've had here. Now, in Paris, I didn't show any restaurants because everybody knows restaurants in Paris, but they they like their children. The French think that as long as you're out of diapers, you should be available to go everywhere and behave like everybody. Uh, and in fact, the schools start if you're 2 years old. They even have for younger ones. As I said, be out of diapers. That's your trick to go to school. And the children walk holding hands between two ropes. This is kind of cute to see, but meanwhile, there are candy available everywhere. That's not very healthy, but they do have that. And so the one on the left is actually a store, and they love English, they love other languages, and pirates and Indians and anything that's a little bit out, everything like that is really liked by the children. So, but you may notice people can walk in and out. It could be easy to steal. There's somebody in the store that might see, but on the right, there's a little stall right next to the subway, way in back of all that stuff. There's somebody, the cashier, but in front, there are little bags, and there are some places where you can pick. There's a like with it pinches whatever candy you want. You put them in your bag. They it goes on a scale, and sometimes even all you have to it tells you how much you owe and you put your money. Or some other times I don't know about this one because I didn't buy candy. I don't particularly care for candy, but I think there's a man in back. He'll come out, welcome you, and give you the change. So that's kind of a fun place to go. There are also all kinds of little restaurants to go where you can walk. I don't like to eat in the street. However, a little more serious, I'm looking good. That time is good. I'm looking at something much more serious, which is that the French have been very good at facing their own history. I only took the time to show this particular thing because uh, if you understand what it says, I know in 1961, because they had a lot of uh, immigrants from the Maghreb, and many of them, they were all legal, but they were used for menial jobs, and they weren't necessarily treated very well. So they protested. The French are big on protest. It's called manifestation, and they call it manif. Now everything is abbreviated, and so it came to their attention. Now France has to face its own history. Initially, they faced the history of what happened during World War II and also with the colonization. And I won't dwell into what has been done because it's really interesting. Not only interesting, but very positive. And it doesn't erase any of what has been done. It just shows and tells what happened and also very often what they will do with it, with that. Because you don't, like Voltaire said, if you don't learn your history, you repeat it. So this particular thing is a plaque on the, I think, see, the Seine has two, well, Paris initially had the city in the center, which looked like a ship. And there were two parts, two branches of the river that went around. So it's in one of the branches. And if you look at it, it says that it's really honoring the bloody repression of the peaceful manifestation, well, of the October 1961 of those Algerians, and a piece of all their you could see their silhouettes, and there was at the bottom also there are the names of all these people, and I was very impressed by that. This is brand new. This from this year. And every year there's something else. And maybe if people are interested, I can make a part 3 with only how the French are facing their own history, the good and the bad. In fact, during the Olympics, the Olympic ceremony, when they showed they projected a picture of Marie Antoinette holding her head and bloody parts on the wall. They wanted to show how horrible the revolution had been. Anyways, there's something else I want to show you on that picture. I was so sad by the fact that there's a can on the left of it, a metal can, because tourists have absolutely no respect for anything. So in Paris, not all tourists, but many of them, they come in a bus, they visit what they're supposed to visit, and then whatever they leave paper, even though I would say every 50 meters or so, there is a plastic bag that's hanging over a rim where you could put all your garbage or what you don't want. I still found in what is supposed to be something for, I would say, commemorating something serious. Somebody had just left a can, an empty can of Coke or something. Well, thus ends my talk. Now, if you have any question, please ask. I think I left time for that. Unmute yourself, please. No
Nicole,
question.
I found that really interesting that you showed us places where you would walk to the dentist and particularly noticed really special places. I know sometimes in our travels, we tend to be going from point A to point B and don't notice all those special things. So I really appreciate your work at pointing out to us all the beauty and interesting stuff along the way.
Any other question? No? Okay. Well,
Hmm. No, I have my question is, Nicole, things seem to be very much driven by tourism. And the setting up for the Olympics caused many things to be there that weren't there before. Are people in Paris happy about that? Do they want to keep that going that same way and continue to make the kind of changes year after year that they made this year and last year?
so what they have done is that now all the barriers have been removed from along the Seine. All the stations, bus stations, and other and subway station are open. You can cross the bridges. You can do anything. What they have done that is very interesting is that during the Olympics, there was a lot of disinformation sent by Russia, saying, and many of the French people believed it, said that the Olympic game cost a fortune and it was terrible because we didn't need it. Well, indeed, it cost a fortune, but uh, if you count the spiffing up of all the buildings that needed to be spiffed up, the Place de la Concorde now is back to its initial beauty. Everything has been regilded. The fountains have been repainted. In various other places, everything has been cleaned up. The Grand Palais, Petit Palais inside have been all beautified. I would say also another important thing is that the building where the Olympians lived, I didn't show it, is now a building that is for lodging, for apartments. The
Mhm.
basilica outside of Paris has been completely cleaned up. Let's see what else. Oh, and the various Olympic sites are reusable. And the things that aren't going to be reused for sports right then and there, I'm thinking of Versailles. They have fixed up a part of Versailles for horse shows, which didn't exist before. They had horse shows, but in a certain area. So this one is outside in the park. So it costs money, but if it had been done before, it would have cost the same amount. It wasn't done. However, an interesting fact that's not often mentioned is that the uh, inside the building where the Olympians lived, all the beds were made of special cardboard, very strong arrangements of cardboard that are all recyclable. The mattresses was given to the French army. Everything has been recycled, including the sand, because the French have, in Paris, there is such a thing as Paris Plage. In the summer, along the quays, they put sand and people can have games and do all kinds of things. It's like a beach. They have a beach in the center of Paris. Uh, Also, next to that Olympian buildings, Olympian, well, it's Olympian apartments. There's a new hospital, which is going to be used by the locals, a new police station also. So all that costs a fortune, obviously. And hopefully they're hoping for the balloon that climbs up in the Tuileries, which didn't have a flame. It wasn't a real flame. It was just electricity on lead and water, mist of water. So this Olympic Games has been the cheapest Olympic Games of all times, and there will be no building that will be left not to be used. Now, that's the positive part. The negative, oh, and also the barriers along the river and so forth, these were lent, I think, or maybe they rented them out, I don't know, by various companies that use those when they build apartment buildings or a variety of building sites. One thing that was not pleasant is that because of the way they had to block off the river, restaurants that were close to the river suffered. They didn't have as many tourists. Some areas the tourists couldn't go to because they were not near any of the venues. If it was near a venue, you had venue tickets, you could go anywhere. That's all I could think of. Does that answer your question?
You just reminded me of the river. We read that the booksellers along the river would be removed.
They weren't. They weren't.
Are they back?
They were not removed.
They were not removed. Oh,
No,
okay.
originally they were supposed to be removed, but they were not. However, they couldn't do much business except from the people who go. You remember you have booksellers on the right bank and on the left bank, but where the river was blocked off, they couldn't go. People couldn't go. If it was anywhere near venues, if it wasn't near venues, you could go anywhere. However, I have to say that in the end, everybody is paying higher taxes to Paris. I know, because our apartment taxes went up. But a lot of that work was supposed to be done before. In the same way, they extended the train up to, I think it's now going up to Le Havre or something. The subway station, they have a they have a fast subway station, and then they have the fast one, which is called RER, now crosses Paris also much further. So, but the problem was that nobody thought really about, first of all, some kind of a libretto to explain what they were doing, or publicly what was done in terms of explanation was the parts where you could not go. That's it. So people were upset. Any other question?
Not a question, but Nicole, it'd be so wonderful to know Paris the way you do.
Well, I was born in Paris.
Yeah.
But actually, I used to know Tokyo probably as well. And at one point, I used to know Rio de Janeiro just as well, but I don't anymore. So I go back to Paris. I'm asked to go back to Tokyo, but I don't think I will. In Paris, if you go to Paris, it changes from one year to the next. And so does every city. But the difference between Paris and a lot of other cities is that because it's French, they don't want to destroy anything that looks nice in their mind. For other people, it looks ugly, but they find it nice. So in areas of Paris where the buildings didn't look very nice, they destroyed those areas. They created absolutely new buildings that are incredibly weird. Some of them have vegetation along their walls. Some of them on top of their roofs. Some of them have stacked buildings, stacked cubes. Others have, they're made of wood. Some buildings are made of wood now.
Mm.
I mean, uh, I haven't shown any of those things. I haven't got. And then you have the very old artists of atelier, like Le Corbusier has his own house that's there to be visited also. There were, if you go to Paris, there's no end, and it's not necessarily something you'll find by visiting sites that are obvious. Now, a lot of places, if you don't speak French, you're in real trouble. But that's true even in this country. If I go to this in the South and I don't understand what they're saying half the time, then I make them repeat. But uh, I eventually can understand. But if English is okay, but you've got to make the effort of the few things like always saying bonjour, au revoir. I mean, bonjour, monsieur, merci. If you go to a bus, in a bus, it's kind of, you walk in and out. It's pretty much at the level of politeness that people were in the 1960s here. I remember when I took the bus or the tramway here, people walked in, they were saying, good morning, uh, good evening, whatever, and then goodbye, thank you. But now you walk in and out, nobody says hello, nobody says thank you.
I do.
Lucky they don't push you. Okay, that's it. No other questions down here.
Can I point out something?
Yeah.
May I mute? One of the things that impressed me as an American was that because in Paris, the boulevards often have a large center strip, it could be 50 feet wide, so forth. And these are used, but in particular, in certain areas, they have left exercise equipment. Not left, they constructed, moved into it, exercise equipment so that the workers in the area in their lunch hour or students could go out and exercise. That can't be done in America because very quickly the weights, the ropes and so forth would be stolen. But it works in Paris.
Well, they would be trashed also.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing. That Paris is a very clean city compared
Not where tourists go.
not where the tourists go. I was about to point that out, that we think nothing of throwing a cigarette down and stepping on it, but you don't. In Paris, they would step on it, but then pick it up and put it in a can, which is usually somewhere near it simply is not left on the street.
Well, every morning in Paris, there's a crew of people that come and clean the sidewalks and the street. And since there are markets in every district, every single district, arrondissement, has at least one or two markets twice a week on the boulevards. And all over France, they have all those markets, but in Paris, it's noticeable. So and they're very near each other. So after the market, obviously, and water is available, potable water for everybody. But the point is, after the market, there's another crew that comes and cleans up everything and removes everything, and eventually gets all cleaned up. But driving through Paris is not something I would advise you to do. In fact, it's dangerous because I don't understand. They have a lane which is counter traffic. So I almost got run over once by a bus.
Across the street By the way, right next door.
Oh,
I mean, it's kind of hard for they have a lane where some places two buses go in opposite direction, another lane, it depends. And then a place where the bicycles and two-wheelers go, and there are many car accidents with two-wheelers because you don't know which directions they're going. So don't, I wouldn't advise you to drive in Paris.
Well, Nicole, this has been great fun. Ed and I were in Paris just over a year ago, and we did bike in Paris on a tour, and we had the the frantic. We rented a car and drove out of Paris during rush hour traffic, and that
Oh,
was
yeah, yeah.
we lived to tell the tale, and our rental car didn't have a scratch, but it was difficult. It was very difficult, but we loved it. We love visiting your city, and would love to go back there. So I
What did you
appreciate.
do with your car? I mean, where did you go with the car outside of Paris?
We went down to Avignon. We drove to Avignon in southern France and did a bicycle trip down there. So
Well, may I make a suggestion, which is what I did anyways. I stopped driving in Paris. However, I would take a train up to a station outside of Paris, rent a car there, and then go.
yeah, we left from the Arc de Triomphe is where we
Okay.
thought we were enough. And then on the way back, we stopped and visited some friends in the middle of France. And then on the way back, we took the fast train, the TGV, back to Paris, which was much quicker and a little less frantic. So, but
Well,
it was wonderful.
new rules are being applied now. Certain areas of Paris, unless you are a taxi or whatever, unless you live there, you can't go through. In other words, used to be that even cabs, if you can't go through, in order to come from Charles de Gaulle, for example, to my apartment, uh, there are many ways, and there are ways that go through small small streets. They won't be allowed anymore. You just have to use the peripherique. They slowed down the speed now. And then there are some specific large places where you have to go. So they made it even more complicated. I warn you.
Well, you're
Thank-
lucky to have a place to be, and we're really lucky that you took
Yeah.
such wonderful photographs and put them together. And I want to remind everybody again that on Thursday, December 12th at 11, we'll be having a group that have put together a show on the trip to the Camilo on the pilgrimage walk, and I'm looking forward to that. So, thank you, Nicole.
Well, thank you all for for your patience.